Imagine a hell on earth. No vast open battlefields, only suffocating jungle, impenetrable darkness, and an enemy you often couldn't see until it was too late. This was the Pacific theater of World War II. Guadalcanal to Okinawa, American and Allied forces faced a fanatical foe, the Imperial Japanese Army, who fought with an almost mythical resolve. Their doctrine, no surrender. Their preferred weapon for psychological terror, the sniper. Japanese snipers were masters of concealment. They tied themselves into trees, dug into hidden holes, or waited patiently in caves, often for days, to pick off targets. Their skill and patience were legendary. An unseen shot could halt an advance, pin down an entire platoon, or send ripples of fear through a column. They were phantom killers, nearly impossible to locate. But the Americans, exhausted by this unseen horror, had a response. A weapon so devastating, so utterly overwhelming, it forced the Japanese to abandon their tactics or be annihilated. This is the story of how the Quad 50, a weapon designed for anti-aircraft combat, became the ultimate anti-sniper tool, literally cutting down entire trees to reach its prey. At the heart of this incredible firepower was one of the most iconic firearms ever created, the M2 Browning 50 caliber heavy machine gun. Designed by John Browning in the 1930s, it was a beast. The .50 cal round was no ordinary bullet. It was a massive projectile, over half an inch in diameter, traveling at incredible velocities. It could penetrate light armor, pierce concrete, and rip through anything in its path. In single mounts, the M2 was already a fearsome weapon, used on tanks, jeeps, and as an infantry support weapon. But against low-flying aircraft, more was needed. The solution was to multiply its power. Enter the M45 Quadmount, colloquially known as the meat chopper or Krautmauer. This was not just one 50 cal, but 4 M2 Browning machine guns mounted together on a powered turret. Each gun fired between 450 and 550 rounds per minute. The combined rate of fire was staggering, up to 2,200 rounds per minute. Imagine a torrent of half-inch slugs, each packing the punch of a small cannon. Originally designed for anti-aircraft defense, these monstrous weapons were mounted on half-tracks or dedicated trailers, making them highly mobile. But it was in the Pacific, against a very different enemy, that they found their true, terrifying purpose. The Japanese doctrine, a fight to the last man, meant that every soldier was a potential threat, and every position was defended with absolute tenacity. Snipers were integral to this strategy. They weren't just picking off officers. They targeted radio men, medics, machine gunners, any specialist who could disrupt American operations. The psychological toll was immense. Japanese snipers were masters of camouflage. They used nets, leaves, and even disguised their positions as natural growth. They chose vantage points in tall trees, often chaining themselves in so they couldn't fall even if killed. Pinpointing their exact location was a nightmare. A muzzle flash might give them away for a split second, but conventional rifle fire was often ineffective against the hidden target in a dense canopy. Flamethrowers were too short-ranged. Grenades couldn't reach. Artillery was too broad and imprecise for a single, hidden target. The frustration was palpable, and the casualties mounted. Then, American ingenuity, born of desperation, found an answer. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't precise, but it was devastatingly effective. Commanders began to experiment.
They took those anti-aircraft Quadmount 50s and pointed them horizontally. The results were immediate and horrifying. When a sniper's position was suspected, even if it couldn't be definitively located, the Quadmount 50 would open fire. A storm of lead. The sheer volume of fire was unlike anything seen before. Each of those 2,000 plus rounds per minute was a .50 caliber bullet. They didn't just hit trees, they shredded them. Entire sections of the jungle canopy would be cut down by the fusillade. Trees, some of them 80 feet tall and several feet thick, would splinter and fall as if struck by an invisible chainsaw. If a Japanese sniper was in that tree, chained or not, they stood no chance. The massive kinetic energy of the .50 cal rounds, multiplied by 4, pulverized everything in their path. Even if the sniper wasn't directly hit, the sheer shock wave, the flying shrapnel from splintered wood, and the terrifying roar of the weapons were enough to dislodge, disorient, or simply scare them into abandoning their position. The Quadmount 50 wasn't precise, but it was absolute. It turned suspected areas of concealment into zones of absolute annihilation.
The psychological impact on Japanese forces was profound. Their carefully crafted, patient sniper tactics suddenly became suicide missions. The Americans weren't just firing at a target, they were literally dismantling the landscape around the target. There was nowhere to hide, even within the seemingly impenetrable jungle. The sound alone was terrifying. The sustained, ripping roar of 4.50 cals was unmistakable. It signaled imminent, unavoidable destruction. The Quad 50's role in the Pacific is a stark reminder of the brutal, often desperate ingenuity born from the necessities of war. It highlights the vast disparity in firepower that defined much of the conflict. While not as famous as the Sherman tank or the Garand rifle, the meat chopper carved its own legend, a testament to raw, overwhelming firepower against a seemingly unbeatable foe. It was an anti-aircraft gun that found its true calling against men in trees, a devastating answer to a unique problem. The Japanese snipers were indeed terrified, not by a single bullet, but by a storm of lead so powerful it could bring down the very jungle around them. The chainsaw 50 cal, a symbol of the relentless, unforgiving nature of the Pacific War.